So I've been recovering from a head cold recently, but you know what? No head cold is going to stop me from reviewing movies, so let's get on with the shit. Hi, I'm Danny Quinn, and welcome to the latest episode of First Impressions. On today's episode, Gerard Butler has to save the world from a series of geostorms in this film that's totally not ripping off Roland Emmerich, because it's brought to us by one of his former collaborators. The movie is set in the not too distant future where the climate has gone completely out of control. There's all these different disasters going on, and against this backdrop, and various countries have banded together to try and control the crisis by creating a series of satellite systems that will help control the climate on a global scale. However, after 3 years, the satellites start malfunctioning, and only one man can stop it. Jake Lawson, played by Gerard Butler, the satellite's architect. So Lawson is sent back up into space in order to figure out why the satellites are going out of control, and he soon discovers the shocking possibility that the satellite's malfunctioning might not be an accident. Geostorm is an odd film. It's had a very hard time getting to the screen, so much so that its production is probably more interesting than the actual film. The film was originally shot back in 2014, but then it was subject to heavy reshoots after a disastrous test screening in 2015. And it's one of those films that has had its release date pushed back constantly before settling on October of this year. And unfortunately, its current release date couldn't have been more badly timed because it's coming out in the wake of several natural disasters around the world. But even without the unfortunate timing surrounding this film's release, it still wouldn't have changed my opinion any, because Geostorm is definitely a disaster movie. Figuratively and literally. Even though this movie has had its release date pushed back constantly, it feels like a movie that should have come out in the late 90s when Hollywood was obsessed with disaster movies. Except even then, it probably would have still been laughed out of cinemas. One thing that's apparent from watching this movie is that it's trying to replicate the work of Roland Emmerich. It feels very much like a cover version of a Roland Emmerich movie. And that's no coincidence considering they have Dean Devlin as director, who co-wrote and produced several of Roland Emmerich's early films. This movie feels like Devlin saw what Emmerich had been doing for the past couple of years and just decided to incorporate ideas from all those films into a blender. A lot of the set pieces really feel like something you would see in other Roland Emmerich movies. There's a big chase sequence involving a car trying to outrun a firestorm that's very reminiscent of that scene in 2012 where the limo's trying to outrun the earthquake. And there's also a government conspiracy that's very reminiscent of White House Down. The flooding sequences are very similar to those seen in The Day After Tomorrow, and they even blatantly left the hailstorm sequence from that film as well, in the exact same location in Japan. And this movie also shows its debt to Roland Emmerich in its writing, because a lot of the characters and a lot of the plot points feel like stuff you'd see in Roland Emmerich movies. There's a lot of family drama, particularly between Gerard Butler and Jim Sturgis, who's his brother. There's a huge cast of supporting characters that are supposed to make you feel that we're all connected as we try to take on this planetary crisis, but all they do is just bog down the movie and make the movie feel more contrived than anything. There's government conspiracies, there's a lot of political stuff that tries to be topical but just ends up coming across on the nose and preachy. It's stuff that we've seen in other Roland Emmerich movies. But say what you want about those movies, and believe me, there's a lot to say, but at least those movies have, for the most part, pretty impressive visual effects. Independence Day still has some great visual effects work during its city destruction scenes. Godzilla has some pretty good visual effects work, even if a lot of it has dated. The tsunami sequences from The Day After Tomorrow still look very impressive to this day. And hell, even 2012 has some pretty good visual effects work, even if a lot of it is really bad in places. By contrast, the visual effects work in Geostorm is very inconsistent. A lot of the stuff set in space, the spaceships and a lot of the set pieces up in space look pretty good. But a lot of the effects work on Earth, that is the city destruction scenes, look shockingly awful. They look like something out of a mockbuster movie, not a movie's $120 million budget. And there's little to no tension in many of these set pieces too. You really feel like a lot of the characters in this film have a main character immunity shield over them. They're constantly outrunning or outdriving or outflying storms that are slowly creeping up on them. And there's so many instances of it. It's the same problem I had with 2012. A lot of the set pieces feel very repetitive. And then there's the scene towards the end where it seems that they're going to do something quite ballsy, but then they immediately cop out from doing that, almost immediately. And for much of the climax, much of the suspense that should have been oozing out of the situation just wasn't there. But it's the script that really sinks this movie, because a lot of the character motivations, especially with those who are manipulating the satellites, make no sense whatsoever. They really do not hold up under any kind of scrutiny whatsoever. And a lot of the characters in this film just feel very cliched. The lead character who's reckless, arrogant, cocky, and the only reason anybody actually keeps him around because his methods do get results. And Butler himself is hilariously miscast in this film. He just comes across as aggressive in every scene he's in. He really doesn't convince me, and he can create satellites to control the planet's climate. And there's also this drama between him and his daughter, who's quite frustrated because he seems to be a neglectful father, but that gets so little focus that I honestly forgot she was even in the movie at certain points. And this movie also has a good cast too, but very few of them actually come across as good or even decent. I like Gerard Butler as an actor, even if he has a habit of picking really bad scripts. But he's just sort of playing himself here again. Jim Sturgis as Butler's brother just spends much of the movie running around on ground level as the pair mend their relationship. And the way they do so is hilarious, as Butler recalls this weird childhood story that comes right out of nowhere. Then you have Abby Cornish as a Secret Service agent who's in a secret relationship with Sturgis, and she just looks bored and emotionless throughout the movie. A lot of her line delivery just felt very forced. The only actors that made any kind of impression on me, good or bad, were Ed Harris and Andy Garcia, as well as relative newcomers Zazie Beetz, who's saddled with playing this quirky technician, and I wouldn't say her performance is entirely her fault, but she's not helped at all by the writing, which portrays her as this caricature of millennials, and the way she talks is frankly cringeworthy. She feels more like a bunch of quirks than an actual character, and she's a terrible comic relief. On the other hand, the only actors I think make a strong impression are Ed Harris and Andy Garcia. They're both great actors, and they're real pros, and they really give the movie their all, even if the material they have to work with is silly to say the least. I did say earlier that the movie was heavily reshot. Supposedly a different crew was brought in along with a different director to reshoot the hell out of this movie. I was paying attention, I was looking to see if I could find moments where it looked like they were reshots, but I didn't find any. It's not a complete Van Forstic situation. You can tell there is some semblance of a creative vision throughout, but there is a lot of moments that feel like they've been chopped up and editing quite badly. And there's two very big time jumps in the narrative, so the signs are still there. So yeah, Geostorm's a bit of a dumb mess. It shamelessly borrows from other movies. Most of the performers are either flat or straight up miscast. The special effects are largely laughable, and the plot doesn't hold up under any real semblance of scrutiny. That being said, it's a watchable bad movie. You could watch this movie without being pissed off or angry that you paid money to see it, but it's best recommended seeing it with friends or if you're drunk or high or something like that. But regardless, it's an awful movie. I'm gonna give Geostorm on a scale of 0 to 10 a 3 out of 10. It's the kind of movie that should have just stayed on a shelf, or it should have come out in the late 90s. I don't know why anybody thought it would be a good idea to make this film, especially since disaster movies are long out of fashion. They've been long out of fashion for quite some time. The release of Independence Day Resurgence should definitely convince you of that. So Geostorm, have you seen it yet? You probably haven't, but if you have, what did you think about it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back soon with videos on Jigsaw and Thor Ragnarok, among several others. But in the meantime, feel free to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. If there's anything I can do to improve my presentation, let me know. I can also be found via Facebook, Twitter, email, and Instagram. And until next time, I'm Danny Quinn, and I hope you have a pleasant evening.